Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
And welcome back. We begin our first conversation of the morning with Adjunct Economics Lecturer for Galen University. We're joined by Carlos Magana. Good morning, Mr. Magana.
Good morning, Malene, and good morning, Isani.
Okay. The budget presentation, Friday. What are some of the takeaways that you've had? Let's not get into the specific numbers as yet. Just let's get your general response or reaction to what has been presented in Parliament.
Well, I did have the privilege to listen to the whole budget, and there's some highlights that I really got from it, and we will try to see if the budget is different from past budgets, because that is what we would need. We need a country that moves forward after where we have been for so long. So in my intake, there are certain things that I would want to discuss, and we can agree to disagree if we are in the concept of this discussion this morning.
All right.
So a lot of people, I think perhaps it's a sentiment that because there was an anticipation that more would have come out of what is being presented in terms of what we'll be dealing with for the next 12 months. And for some reason, some people are of the impression that they sort of fell short of that particular expectation. Having listened and having followed what was presented in terms of the figures and what the outlook is, what is your reaction to that? Do you feel as if though it sort of satisfied what you were expecting, or it kind of fell short as well?
Okay, there is a difference. There is a difference. Why do I say there is a difference? Because in my classes with my students who do intermediate macroeconomics or which do economic analysis, we do analyze the budget that is being presented for that year. That is part of what the students need to do. And they would break in, and we would even do debates in class on the days on the budget. And one of the things that would always face out is that there is not too much of a difference from budget of year one to the other year. When I listen to the budget this year, to the budget speech, there are some differences that are lined out, and I think that has made the key element of a difference to me. That now I was able to listen to a budget where things are going to be done A, B, C. It was outlined that X amount of money is going to be for this project, for that project. So there is a way of now looking at it that, okay, I as a Belizean now know that in a certain ministry, there's going to be a certain amount of money that is going to be used for specific areas as A, B, and C. It was stated, and that is what I believe now we can ask for, and to hold the government accountable. Oh, you promised in the budget that this amount of money is going to be used. Now, if there are supplementary budgets to expand those, then why is that needed? Okay, or if you are able to save, then let us listen to why you were able to save, because a budget is to be used. So there is always a question, why was there savings? And there's always a question, why do we need to bring in supplementary budgets for certain line items? So that is what caught my attention from the beginning. So yeah. There is where I part from in the budget.
Yeah. Let's the budget is presented under the theme today's sacrifice, tomorrow's triumph. And I think that that's interesting, because what it would lead one to believe is that it's setting the groundwork for a recovery and eventual boost of the economy. But what we are facing in today's reality is unprecedented. The financial crisis that not just Belize, but many countries across the globe are in, is one where innovation is essential for us to be able to move beyond where we are today. And that innovation is coupled with tough decisions. Do you see that mirrored in what was presented on Friday?
I think that was part of the discussion that we had prior to. And when I used the example of the Intel in Costa Rica, and really, when I listened to the budget, I was not able to define that as specific.
Yeah.
What are going to be the new industries that we're expecting to see?
Yeah.
It was not outlined in the budget. Nonetheless, in the budget, it was mentioned that they're going to foster for foreign direct investment now. So it was not outlined as A, B, and C, and it could be because of time factor, could be because of communication with foreign agencies and so forth. But at this point, what gives me the proactive decision or the proactive words to that is that they are looking forward for foreign direct investment. And that is where we're going to see the new industry. That is where I am expecting. And when these 12 months are to pass, are we going to see these new industries? Now, one thing that we need also to keep in mind is that we, as a country, we also need to look at this budget, and the theme is today's sacrifice, tomorrow's triumph. So it is saying to us that this is just a 1/5 of the expectation that is to be achieved. So if I am parting this as a 20% of my objective, then can I be able to evaluate and to be able to criticize and to be able to say, no, it's still in that perspective that I am here, I am to do something, I will achieve it, and that's why I'm telling you, let us sacrifice today. And the budget does call for a lot of sacrifice so that tomorrow we can be triumphant. Now, the tomorrow is the big expectation.
Yeah.
When will that the tomorrow be?
Yeah.
Will it be in the second year? Will it be in the third year? Will it be in the fourth year? Will it be in the fifth year?
Well,
So that is,
if
yes.
we're looking at what the IMF has put forward in terms of the length of time it would take for us to recover, then that tomorrow is not next year or the year after. We're looking at least to 2025 thereabout.
2025, 2030. It will also read. So it is a very very interesting how we have been guided by the IMF, what has been stated by the IMF, what of those statements have been introduced conceptually into this budget, and there are some that have been. Now, I think it would be interesting to be able to see why the limitations that the budget has from my perspective.
Yeah.
And there are two things that I would want to highlight before starting to look at the budget itself.
Okay.
They says, and I quote, that this budget presentations comes at a juncture of unparalleled national crisis is indisputable. Now, all of us know where we are. All of us know the condition that we are. And it brought me, when I read that and when I listened to that, it brought me to the discussion that we had earlier.
Yeah.
Will we have the liquidity, $10 in hand? Remember that example. Now, the budget now has clearly stated to us, we will not have the $10. We will not have the $10. And that is where now the rebounding has to start to reach to those 10, then 12, and then $15 a ton. So we need to start with less than 10 to reach to more than $10 a ton.
Yeah.
And there is where it conditions. And another thing that I would want to bring up, which is in the revision that he did of the performance of the past budget, there is something that I need to bring in so that we can be able to understand what is expected. And it is in under the expenditure performance in 2020-21, and it reads, on the expenditure side, total spending fell by only 15%, far below the 28% drop in revenue. Now this is critical. So we have used more than what we had because we only dropped, or the expenditure, we only drop it by 15%, but the revenue fell by 28%. So it means to say then that to keep on par, I should have dropped my expenditure to 28% also.
Yeah.
Because of that, then I continue spending more than what I have. I continue opening the deficit for that year. And so that conditioned where we are now to look at the budget that was read. Okay, so yes.
And I just wanted to add there, you know, it's interesting, and we perhaps haven't taken the moment to highlight it, that a year ago when the last administration presented its budget, it was titled Moving Ahead, but in fact what we did was go to a standstill, and no one expected or knew that this would come. So all that was presented at that time, I'm sure, and we haven't done enough analysis to know, it really just became moot. You know, no one was able to proceed with plans as they did because we were in the midst of a pandemic. But moving forward, one of the critical points here, and I want to get right into that at the start, the title of the budget, Today's Sacrifice. The biggest sacrifice that we've been in discussion about is reducing the wage bill. Let's talk about that shortfall there, or the savings that will be made there, and other areas that you are seeing savings that we really can be able to put into focus what today's sacrifice in this budget really is.
When we look at the recommendation in the budget, which will be, because of our parliamentary system, the budget will pass. And there is that recommendation of a salary adjustment. That adjustment is at a 10%. Now, the reading or the budget or the PM didn't really state it for how many years. In discussions, what we have heard is that it is going to be for a certain amount of years. But in the budget, where it says today's sacrifice, it didn't state, okay, we're making this today and it's going to be for the next 3 years. It did not state that. So that is a statement of hope. That is how I see it. Because it is not telling me it is going to be for the full 3 years as it's being anticipated. It's only to this specific year. And if it is going to be only for this specific year, and the salary adjustment is only going to be for this specific year, then it brings to us some sort of hope that the sacrifice I'm making today can be alleviated, because it said 10% today, next year it could be 7%, and the following year can be 5%. We don't know. It's going to be how the government finds its managing of its revenues. And that is why then I believe that it wasn't stated as a 3-year specific. Because we're looking forward to see what is going to happen, and the expectations are that we're going to rebound. So if the economy is going to rebound as it is being stated or being outlined, then, well, we might not need to keep that 10% for the next 3 years. It can adjust as it moves on. But that was my perspective when it came to that big issue, and it was really stated, okay, it is going to be for so many years. It is only at this present budget. That gave me a little hope that, okay, we're moving forward. There is room for negotiations year after year.
Go ahead.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Yes, and that brings me into the introduction of the fiscal year budget, and I will quote: "There are limited funds and virtually unlimited calls for spending." I remember Marlene saying in the last presentation, there is a pie that needs to be divided, and therefore we clearly note that it is stated there is limited financing, but there is unlimited needs. And usually when we find ourselves in a recessionary economy that has been falling for so many trimesters, which after a year or so it starts to run into a depression, then automatically we can clearly see that there is an unlimited call. Why? What gives us our revenues? What gives the government revenues? It's based on economic activity. So if there is a recession, then the economic activity falls. We are not an economy that depends on gold or so forth.
Yeah.
We're an economy that depends on production. So if our economy has not been able to develop different areas of economic activity, different sectors, then we fall under that gap, that we cannot really move on. We cannot really move forward because we need to build to be able to do so. And our production is very minimal in the sense of large industries. To be able to foster new employments, it's difficult. Why? Because we are only, one of the largest industries that we have is tourism. Then comes the construction sector. The construction sector, here we fall under, do we have sufficient employment that the financial sector can be able to say, okay, I'm going to give loans to everyone so that they can start moving or building their homes or start new enterprises, new businesses. Do we fall, for example, if let us use a Belizean word, catch and kill. If an employee is a catch and kill worker, will he be able to get a loan from the bank? There can be liquidity, but that liquidity will only be available to those who have a permanent employment.
That is based on a certain eligibility as well, correct?
Exactly. So the time frame that you have working. For example, I am an adjunct lecturer for Galen, but in the institution where I'm formally employed, which is the Belize Adventist Junior College, our institution has a policy that if we are not employed for more than a year, then there cannot be a recommendation letter to take to the bank to request a loan. Okay, so people who do not have that formal or continuous employment cannot be able to go to the financial sector to be able to request. So, and remember that all this is part of the economic activity. All this is part of what will be added to the GDP of the country. So it is not only the tourism sector or only the agriculture sector. No, we have so many economic activities that are being carried out during the course of the year. And if that is not being done, then people cannot get formal employment. So it will take a time. So this rebounding condition that we have is also conditioned by the economy itself. So we need to move on. And this is what I was expecting to see in the budget, why the new industries was very critical and important. Or at least the expansion of the existing industries. So that is where I am looking forward, and that is what I am expecting, that in the weeks or months to come, we can see the different ministries now. There are so many ministries or not. At this point, it is already in line. It is in-house. So what we need to see now is the productivity of each ministry itself. And if that productivity starts, then we will have people that are going to be employed. And once employment is there, and even though there is a sector of the economy which has a formal or permanent income that is going to be reduced, but if the other sectors of the economy start to produce, that impact will not be felt in the long or medium of the year. I'm not speaking about 12 no, I'm speaking within a year.
Well, even if we're looking at, for instance, revenue collection, the onus of that is upon the very public officers who are part of the entire government structure to make sure that the monies that are owed or that are outstanding to government are being collected so that things can continue to take place, correct?
You just mentioned something, Sally, that I would always discuss with my students. That we, or let me use, Carlos Magana, I am a culprit to that. And you might say, but why? And please, I don't want anybody to take it as personal, please.
No problem.
Or
no
they're affected. Okay, no offense to any culture in our country, because we are, it seems now that we are so thin-skinned that we get offended so easily.
Yeah.
Now, we are the culprits that our monies did not reach the government coffers. Why? I go to the Chinese.
Yeah.
And I get a Coca-Cola. Or I buy let me use $100 of products, and let us assume that all those $100 of products have GST. So in a formal, I get a receipt, then the GST is there.
Okay, can I interject quickly?
Yes.
Quickly, just if you allow me to hear. There's a difference between your $100 example versus the Coca-Cola example, though. Because what I'm saying that is, like for me then, if I go to the store with $100, very likely I will demand a receipt. If I go to the store and purchase a Coke, I really wouldn't be asking for a GST receipt. I'm just putting that out there.
That is where I was going. That is why I used the example of a Coca-Cola and $100. In the $100, I will request a receipt. But when I go and I buy 2 or 3 items only, and I am trying to move fast, I tell the shop attendant, you know what? It's $2, so I'm going to leave it here in your counter.
Yeah.
Now, imagine how many of us, thousands per day, thousands of us per day, purchase thousands of individual items. And we do not ask for a receipt. So even though if the government would want to put strict measures, they cannot control that. It is me who has to control that to be able to foster. That's why the PM said it is all of us who need to work together. And this is where it comes. I will need to, as I was telling my wife and other friends, you know what, we need to do that. When we go to the store, get your receipt. Because that is going to start to bring, and you know how many millions of dollars stay with the store owners, which should be in the government's coffers.
And when it goes into the public purse, then it's for, or it should be, for the public benefit. And I think it's such a critical point that you're making, because these small actions do have a cumulative effect. But I'm sure when we talk about being able to ensure proper collection of taxes, we're also looking at outstanding taxes as well. You know, part of the recovery plan I believe there were 4 points that were made. One include the salary cuts or the reduction in expenses in salaries, in goods and services. The other included the collection of outstanding taxes. And there was also some other points to help to get, because you started talking about rebounding, but beyond rebounding, it's almost like you have to get your proper footing in place. That's the recovery part of it. Let's dive into those. So there were 4 aspects. We're touching on tax collection now. The other 2?
The
recovery plan, yeah.
The recovery plan, yes. In the first step, sorry that I have my eyes down.
That's fine.
I ask the public to please bear with me, as I need to look at. The first step was, which is being slashed by 78, that was the a reduction in budget spending on goods and services. Now, that was the first point. The second is a reduction in interest payment, which is from the budget. The budget is being programmed at some $53 million now. And the third one was the augmentation of revenues, which is the one that we have just spoken about. So now with this recovery system that we see here.
And the fourth is looking at investment, domestic and foreign.
Yes, foreign domestic, recovery plan spending, no. Now, when we put all of this together, all of them, do we see across the board, do we see all sectors of the country participating in the recovery plan? Okay? No. From my perspective, about 70-75% is participating in that. Where we would come in, and again, I need to mention it, where we would all come in is making our personal efforts to be able to be participative in asking for our GST. I will just differ a little here, but just to mention, when I was in Costa Rica studying or living for some time, one of the things that they did, they called it, and I will translate it in English, business lottery, if I can use it in that tone. What did that requested? Every citizen would gather 5 receipts. You would put them in an envelope and you would take it to specific centers. And every end of month, there would be a raffle. And your envelope could be the one to participate. And the incentive was a financial incentive. They would be giving a certain amount of thousands of, in Belizean dollars, it would be thousands of dollars to that specific individual, or it was 3 or 4 of them that would receive that amount on that specific end of month. So that was an incentive for the people to ask for those. So there are many things that can be done in that recovery plan.
And it builds a culture of people demanding receipts.
It does. It does build that. It does build that
I think the GST did that at one point in Belize. There was one year that they did the raffle where you could submit receipts and be able to, it may have been a car, I think, that they raffled at that time. But you're right, this is kind of the innovative actions that you'd want to see, where you can stimulate the type of behavior or encourage the type of behavior that you want to see in the average public.
Well, now that we're speaking about that, I would venture to say to the Minister of Housing, make that, and then one of the prizes can be one of these small little houses to someone. Who, I mean, in other words, if there is a person who participated in GST and he is, a person has a lot of finance, well, you don't give him a house, but if a person who is in need of, you provide that for that individual. You can have several incentives in that.
what we're going to do right now, we do have to get in a very quick break here to get into the second part of the conversation. Another key area, and we're going to tackle it as soon as we come back, is looking at the potential for devaluation. Many people are concerned, they question it. I'll ask you to respond to that question when we come back from the break. Please stay tuned.
When someone you love becomes a memory, the memory becomes a treasure. Channel 5 introduces the Daily Obituaries. The Daily Obituaries will broadcast all death and funeral announcements and memorials to honor your loved one's life and memories. The Daily Obituaries airs on Channel 5 prior to the evening newscast, with subsequent repeats at 10 p.m. and 12 noon the following day. It will also be placed online on our social media platforms, all for a standard package fee. Celebrate their lives and memories with Channel 5's Daily Obituaries. Honor in life and reverence in death.
And welcome back. We continue our conversation with economist Carlos Magana, who has been very useful, in a manner of speaking, in terms of our understanding of the budget. Mr. Magana, I want to go into a slightly different direction here. Prior to the commercial break, Marlene asked about the very palpable fear of a devaluation. Talk to us about where we are and perhaps what are some of the concerns that we should be looking at in respect of the real prospect of our dollar being devalued.
Devaluation is being done or suffered by a country when we indebt ourselves much more than we are available to have and collect in our revenues to be able to pay our debts. And this is a condition that we have. Secondly, when the economy or the central governments start to print more money than is based on our national production, then we start to have a high inflation. And by default, then the inflation brings in the unexpected devaluation or the losing of the purchasing power of our dollar. So, and that is where we stand right now, because these two conditions exist. The having to use $30 million monthly from the central government is printing of money, because we are not producing that. Our GDP is not producing that amount, and that's why we have to make a loan. It's not monies that the country is earning because it is producing. We're simply creating that amount of money to be able to suffice the needs that we have or the government has to pay whatever it needs to, and to be able to do specific projects. But in this case, the $30 million, as we have heard and we are able to understand, it's mainly used for sustainability of government affairs.
Yeah.
That is the risk. That is the risk that we really have there. And that continues to increment the debt ratio. We were at 126 when we saw the IMF report.
Yeah.
But prior, then we are now to 134. And if we continue borrowing, just to keep that wage bill, that will continue creating the ratio into a higher rate. And if that happens, we will definitely we will lose our peg to the dollar, to the US dollar. We will, because we're not controlling, we're not taking in the measures that are necessary to do so. Well, the budget is clearly stating that it wants to withhold that. It does, and the PM mentioned it in his paper. He spoke about the resiliency of the public finances. And that is really, do we really have that, or we need to acquire it? We need to be able to develop that. We really don't have it.
Yeah.
And then he said to that, and I quote, and the durability of the value of the Belizean dollar. So he is cognizant. Government parliamentarians are cognizant, because it is there, that there is a tendency, if we as a country do not do what needs to be done, and when I use the term need to do what needs to be done, if you have to cut wages, do it, but at the same time, use that money to rebound another sector in the economy.
Yeah.
And many of these individuals, I am one of them, who will be suffering that 10% deduction. But it is better for me, and I'm telling you, it is.
How is it better for you? Explain that.
It's best for me to lose at 10% than not to lose. Okay, I'm not going to give my salary income. Let us say that I win $1,000. Right now I have $500 US. If there is a losing to the peg or a devaluation, so that everybody can understand the chart. If there is a devaluation of 5 to 1, then I will only have $200 US. So I am not losing 10%. I am reducing my salary to 1/5 of its value, of its real international value. So I prefer, and this was a hard understanding and acceptance from people close to me and my wife, of that 10%. But I told her it's preferable for me to lose 10 than to lose 1/5, or to stay with a 1/5 value of my purchasing power. Why, Marlene and Sandy? And I'm going to ask you this question. I want you to respond. If you go to any supermarket, any little store in the corner, what percentage of items are made in Belize?
It's a very good question. I would say it's a rather small percentage when you look at all the other items that are imported into the country. Wouldn't hazard a particular figure, but it's safe to say that a majority of what is sold on the shelves are items that are brought into Belize.
When I did my thesis, and I did it on the structural reform when 900 individuals were retrenched, the data or the figure that we had was approximately 85% of the items on the shelter are imported. Moving more towards a 90%. Now, can you imagine if we would suffer a devaluation, and this is what the larger community in the Belizean society needs to understand, that we are price takers. We are not price givers. And if we are price takers, a devaluation is going to hurt us tremendously. So we cannot continue having or increasing our debt. We cannot. We need to be realistic. It's not something that, oh, I just don't want. No, I don't want this to happen. No, no.
Yeah.
Please.
Carlos,
This is economics.
Yeah.
Yes, proceed.
I think what is somewhat depressing, like when I was looking at the figures on Friday, we're looking at a debt of about $4 billion, but our budget is only $1 billion. So it's a little bit over $1 billion, but round it off to say $1 billion. That's 25% of what we owe in total. So how do we now put forward a recovery plan that says, okay, we'll try to reduce the outstanding 75% to kind of balance things out. I think that is a very critical thing.
It is a critical situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And one thing that we need to remember here, Marlene and Isani, is that our debt is $4+ billion. Our recovery plan within the IMF recommendation is 2025 and then 2030. To reduce that debt to approximately 75 or 80%, and thereafter continue. By 2030, we're expected to be in 80 or something, according to the IMF report. I know the government was going to try to bring this even closer or reduce it even before that time. Now, so your statement is right.
Yeah.
But when we add 10 years, we'll be having $10 billion. And if the budget continues to increase, then we will be having much more.
Yeah.
And from that, the proactive way in the economy, to incentive economic activity, then we will be able to garner sufficient money to be able to pay off the loans.
Yeah.
I would need to go through my notes, but if I can recall, at this point, it said that the PM did mention in the budget that they're looking to certain ways of trying to reduce the budget. And one of them is to sell, in other words, part of the debt. That would be a very interesting one to do and would help us, definitely would help us. But how many would want to purchase Belize debt? That is,
given our history of repayment, because where we may not be thinking from the bondholder standpoint, what we can recall is how many times we've spoken of renegotiating or haircuts, or this is where those prior conversations are critical. Now, when you talk about where we are with our debt, there's several areas. I know that the Minister of State and Finance has clearly identified in previous conversations. You're talking about reducing how much you spend. And that's one of the things we see in the recovery aspect. You cut down on how much you spend on goods and services and on your wage bill. That was one identified factor. Debt restructuring, getting a handle on the debt, is one of the critical areas as well. And I think that one of the things that you are speaking about when it comes to potential devaluation and why it is such a concern for many is why we led this interview by saying, where are the opportunities for new income or increased income? Let me use an example I think all of us can understand. If I only make a certain amount of money and I owe almost my entire salary to all these different financial institutions, I also have the expenses of my household. I have the expenses to get my children to school, to feed them, clothe them, school them. I have, I need to put fuel in my car or pay for my bus fare. I have these expenses that I just no longer can meet. I have to at some point do two things. One, cut down on how much I'm spending, whether I'm moving from car to bus or bus to bike. I also have to look for new ways to earn income, because it is the only way I will get out of this situation. Is that a fair representation?
You have mentioned something very, how can I say, you have given a key point in this. And let me expand on what you have mentioned.
Yeah.
I am going to lose 10% of my salary. I will. Now, am I going to stay with my hands crossed and cry, I lost 10%? Well, everywhere I go, I lost 10%.
Before you even go there, have you, as an economist, as a teacher who may potentially face a 10% cut and an increment freeze, have you already started to consider how your spending, your budget, your personal budget is going to change? Are you going to continue spending knowing that you'll have a 10% shortfall?
Okay. This is where we have the proactive mind, and we have the mind that is only going to cry on what has happened. Mm-hmm. What have I done? What have I spoken to the people that are close to me? We need to build that 10% that we're losing. I am not saying I am losing. No, it is incentivizing me. It is creating an incentive in me to get even more than 10%. I'm trying to do things now, and that will bring back to me that 10% and the more. So what am I doing in that case? This salary adjustment that is reducing my 10% has only incentivized me to be part of the rebounding of the economy by creating more than 10% of my loss. So the mindset, Marlene and Isani, is critical. Mm-hmm. I can stay and cry, or I can be proactive. Mm-hmm. And I can say, no, I need to do this. I'm going to do this other, and I am going to find that 10%. Yes, what you said is correct. And not all of us are going to have that mentality. But I do hope, and I would make a call to the Belizean public service people. Let us build that 10% that we have lost. And if I build that 10%, I am going to create a demand from someone. And by creating that demand from someone, he will also create a demand from someone else. So we can reactivate and start together the rebounding. It's not something that this government or this administration created, no. It is something that this administration, inherited. But are they going to close their eyes and are they going to cry on the past? I don't believe. Okay, you did it in the first budget presentation. Perfect. You needed to give
context,
a complete picture of where the country was. Okay, fine, accepted. You did it. But we cannot be like the last administration that even in the 13th budget presentation, they will bring in things that the previous administration to them had done. No, that cannot happen.
Yeah.
We need to move on.
Yeah.
I understood that there was something that was mentioned. This is what we were left with. Perfect. And I think it just brought a very clear, beautiful picture. And I call it as an economist,
it provides a
beautiful,
context.
Where we are.
Yeah.
But we need to move from there.
Precisely.
We know what the disease is. We know it.
Yeah. We
now are the professionals in line to see that this starts to move on. Yeah. And everyone, every Belizean is part of that.
Mm-hmm. See, that's the issue, or that's the concern, because my fear is that we're going down a road again where for the next 5 years, blame is being ascribed to one particular administration as opposed to saying, well, let's look forward, let's look towards resolving the issue as opposed to harping on what has happened. I think that is what sort of stagnates the entire issue.
Yes. And that's why I'm saying, let us move forward. Let us move forward. You're right, Isani. That was something that was criticized every time we did those debates from the that why was it necessary after 5, 6, 7 years to bring in what the past administration had done? Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
You are the new manager.
Yeah.
You are the one who has the capacity to do so.
Yeah.
And I am sure that the new administration, with the mindset that I have seen, the movement that I have seen, I see that there is capacity to do that.
Yeah.
I can be wrong. My words can be, I can eat my words later on, no? But this is what I am seeing.
Well,
this is
and I wanted to just bring it back because it is a pertinent topic. You clearly outlined your position as a teacher, how you feel about the salary cuts. You said you prefer to have 10% taken away now to maintain the value of your salary as it is. Because you understand the macro picture, how the larger scheme of things, how it fits in. But you said something key there. You said you are willing to make that sacrifice if you know it will go into helping with the rebound. And to be fair, I think we have heard that message from the unions, but what they call their conditional no. The issue here, Carlos, because we must keep our governments, whatever political party they are, accountable. Saving or sacrificing today doesn't automatically equate into tomorrow's triumph. There must be measures in place to ensure that whatever is sacrificed is used to its maximum potential to help to stabilize and then move towards recovery. Would you agree? And do you see these indicators in our budget?
Yes, I agree with you. I fully agree, and I am of that perspective. That whatever is going to be, let me use it like the suffering so that everybody can understand. The suffering that everybody is going to pass through now should receive the benefit later on. And I saw it in the budget where it mentioned and it outlined several aspects, point by point. Okay, if there is going to be rural or urban impact, okay, and is there going to be, and maybe I can read one of them. There says 3 million going for food assistance programs. Okay, that is an ongoing program. It has to happen because of the condition that the country is right now. There are many people who need food assistance. There are many. That is a rural and that is an urban impact program. Now, does that create economic activity? It does, but how? If I receive the money, then I'm going to consume. If I receive items, somebody else has already received that money to reinvest. Yeah. So which is preferable, for me to receive items or for me to receive cash? Now, this is where the dilemma comes in. Because if I am going to receive cash and I am going to use it, okay, with that I can go and I can purchase 5 little blouses, or 2 pairs of sandals, and then I can go and sell it, and at the same, it provides more income for me, then it is going to be good. But if as soon as I receive it, I just go and squander it in places that I should not, or with things that I should not. There is where the problem starts. Okay?
It's also, I think, a further conversation, one that started before, that these types of assistance should ensure that the priority goes to local producers, if it's food items or whatnot, so the money stays in the economy. You know, there's so much more that we could discuss, just but we're out of time, so I wanted to give you the opportunity to have a closing point.
Okay. I believe that, well, I shouldn't use the term I believe. I am cognizant that the budget was, in its part, it was different because it highlighted line items, which is what we were expecting.
Yeah.
It gave a scenario of the condition of the economy, which I was expecting that was supposed to happen. And it gave a recovery plan. Not too detailed, but there is a starting point, and that is good. That I believe that is the first time that I'm reading the budgets, I've seen how we're going to recover. Specifically, we're going to earn here, we're going to save here, there, and other. So, in a nutshell, I can say, the budget is showing a proactive action, and I am expecting that it does keep that, and it do achieve what it is expected to do. Now, many other things. And one thing that I would have really loved to discuss is our debt. Yeah. But maybe some other time.
We'll have that, yeah, we'll have future opportunities. But we do appreciate you kind of just giving an overview for us today.
Thank you. God bless you.
All right. And with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to representatives of the different national teams in multiple sports. And they're going to be talking about the impact of COVID on athletes. So please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.